Beijing on a TripADeal Warriors of China tour. I visited during one of the busiest public holidays of the year, and it was non-stop. We explored Tiananmen Square, wandered through the Forbidden City, climbed the Great Wall, took a pedicab through the old Hutong lanes, saw a theatre show that literally pours water on stage, and even stopped in for traditional Chinese medicine and some shopping. Let me show you what Beijing feels like, up close and real. So the second stop on our TripADeal China tour was Beijing. We took the 3:13 p.m. train from Xi'an to Beijing, and so we arrived at about 10 p.m. on a Friday night into Beijing. And we stayed at the Wyndham Beijing North Hotel, so this is quite a nice hotel. We didn't have any time to enjoy things like the included bathtub because obviously we didn't get to the hotel until like about 11 p.m. and we had to be up early the next morning. But it did have a really nice shower. And so, yeah, the next morning we were up bright and early for a full day of tours. The buffet breakfast was like all of the Chinese hotels buffets that we had, absolutely amazing. Everything available, Western food, Chinese food, fruit, pastries, everything. So that was great. We filled up on that to get ready for the day. And then we met up with the tour guide and off we went. So the first stop on the coach trip was to Tiananmen Square and the Forbidden City. Note here was one of the extras. We had to pay $20 for the rental of the earpieces to hear our guide's commentary. I know a lot of people have asked about, what are the extras on TripADeal, and that was one. Of course you didn't have to pay it, but if you didn't, you'd miss all the information from the guide. So yeah, it was worth paying for, and also you probably get lost because at least with the earpieces in, you could hear the tour guide, and if you got too far away, it would stop, and so you'd know that you had wandered a bit too far and you needed to get back in the direction of where the group was because it was really busy. Because it was a long weekend in China for the Dragon Boat Festival, so everywhere was just super busy. So it also disrupted some of our plans, but more on that later. So we started in Tiananmen Square. Tiananmen Square is a historically significant site in the center of Beijing, and it's adjacent to the Forbidden City. It's been the location for major events, including the Mao Zedong proclaiming the founding of the People's Republic of China in 1949. It is named after the Tiananmen Gate of Heavenly Peace to its north, and the square is home to the Monument to the People's Heroes, the Great Hall of the People, and the National Museum of China. To many in the world, it's famous for the 1989 Tiananmen Square massacre. So in April 1989, students gathered in the square to mourn the death of a reform-minded Communist Party leader and to call for greater freedoms, an end to corruption and political reforms. The protests grew to include hundreds of thousands of people from all walks of life across China. After weeks of escalating tensions and failed attempts at negotiation, the government declared martial law on May the 20th. On the night of June 3rd to the 4th, the People's Liberation Army was sent into Beijing. They opened fire and crushed unarmed civilians in the square and on nearby streets. The number of dead is estimated to be in the hundreds or thousands, though the true figure is unknown, and the Chinese government has not released accurate information. So I do remember this, so this was quite a moving place to visit, and I really felt part of history seeing Mao's picture and the guards. Yeah, it was just like one of those things you've seen on TV, and it's hard to believe it's real when you actually see it. If you're enjoying this video, please do hit the like and subscribe buttons. The Forbidden City is right next to Tiananmen Square, so we just kept going on into this amazing complex. So the Forbidden City is a rectangular palace complex in Beijing. It covers 720,000 square meters. It's built between 1406 and 1420 for the Ming and Qing emperors and is now a UNESCO World Heritage Site and a museum. It was the ceremonial and political center of China for 500 years and was named forbidden because access was severely restricted. It was home to 24 emperors of the Ming and Qing dynasties and was occupied until the last emperor, Hui, was expelled in 1924. It's the world's largest collection of preserved wooden structures and features iconic yellow tiled roofs and red walls, symbolizing imperial power. I have to say that considering the crowds, doing this on a TripADeal tour really did make the process seamless and easy. It was busy, but as such a large area, it was fine. Though our coach couldn't get through to pick us up at the end, and we had to take a local bus back out to the coach. This was paid for by TripADeal, and obviously it probably wasn't very expensive, but it was a nice added extra experience. I love using public transport to get the feel of places, so I actually felt lucky that we couldn't get back to the coach. So, well, the coach couldn't get to us. So, yeah, we just caught the bus sort of down the road and out of the area and then got on the coach. And for the evening, there was an optional tour to see the Golden Mask Show. And this was an extra 350 yuan, so about 75 Australian dollars. I'd read good things and bad things about this show, so I wasn't sure about it, but decided to do it in the end. So we left the Forbidden City about 3 o'clock. We got dropped off over where the Golden Mask Show was at, and Michael, our guide, showed us where to go opposite, across the road to where there's some eateries, and there was a good variety of places there, including Chinese, and there was even a taco place. We went to the wonton soup place. It was 18 yuan and had a menu for English translations, so we just had to point to what we wanted. Um, Absolutely really yummy soup. It was really great, really filling. Yeah, so just 18 yuan, so it's about $3.80 Australian, and a can of drink was 4 yuan, so just 86 cents, so really cheap. We then crossed back over the road for the show, the Golden Mask Dynasty Show. It was, as I said, 350 yuan each. We were told that we were in the 480 yuan seats, but we had B seats, so I don't think that we'd got the bargain that they'd said, and any group discount was actually taken by the company. But still, the seats we had were good. They were fine. So the Golden Mask Dynasty Show is a large-scale, visually stunning theatrical performance at the OCT Theatre in Beijing, and it combines dance, acrobatics, music, and special effects. It's set in a mythical era of ancient China, and the story centers on a queen who wears a golden mask and creates a prosperous dynasty through wisdom and love, navigating themes of war, peace, and sacrifice. So it's just an hour-long show. The one we went to went from 5:30 to 6:30. It was amazing. The staging was absolutely brilliant. Best staging I've probably ever seen. There was everything from live peacocks, the acrobatics, amazing costumes. There was performers on the side stage as well as at the front, and there was written commentary in Chinese and English, throughout it to let you know what the story line was. So the highlight had to be when the whole stage turned into a waterfall. It was just, absolutely amazing staging. I can't imagine how they did that. Um, I will say that it was quite expensive, and I love the staging, but I didn't think the performance was, you know, absolutely amazing. It's not on a par with things like Cirque du Soleil or anything like that. The acrobatics was quite basic, and there were a lot of flex feet in the dancing. So I'd really enjoyed it. I'm glad I went, but I wouldn't go again. So after that, we went back to the hotel. We got there about 7:30, so we didn't go anywhere after that. It had been a pretty full day, so we just had a drink in the hotel with some of the people we met on the tour. That was, one of the highlights of being on the tour was the other people that were on the tour. We had a great group and we got on really well. There wasn't much variety of drinks, and I have to say, beer is pretty much what you can get to drink, but I did manage to get some wine here. And yeah, so we just had a drink and then up to bed and up again the next morning. So more breakfast, as you can see here, the buffets are just amazing and you can see all the options. So a lot of people grab a couple of pastries or fruit to take with them for the days. The days are long and lunchtime is often late. Like as you'd seen yesterday, we didn't get lunch till like 3:30 or something like that. I did grab a pastry each morning, but I always managed to eat enough breakfast to keep me going till whenever we next managed to get food. But it is something that people always talk about with like these TripADeal tours to, either take snacks. I did take some bars from home as well, and I never even touched them. So it depends on how you go with food and if you can fill up at breakfast. We had to meet at 8:30, and the first stop was the Jade Factory. So this is another one of the government mandated tour stops and why they subsidize the trips to make them so affordable. I really don't mind going to them because there's always something interesting, in the talk bit at the beginning, and I'm pretty good at saying no when they try to sell you something. So they actually didn't bother me. That's another question I've been asked is, how were they? Say the bit where you could see the creators making the jade balls was really interesting, so that made it worth it for me. And there were some really interesting and very expensive pieces of jade that you could buy. So I quite enjoyed walking around, and there was jewelry, bowls, figurines. We did get some of the cheap bracelets. I have to say, I laugh that they kept going about don't buy from the markets as you'll get knockoffs and they won't be good quality. But I think the ones that we bought were pretty cheap, so I'm sure they weren't high quality. But still, it was a nice little souvenir. And then we were off to one of the absolute highlights of the trip, the Great Wall of China. So the Great Wall of China, it's not a single wall, but a series of fortifications, and it stretches over 13,000 miles. And it's built over the centuries to protect China's northern border. Construction began as early as 220 BC, and with the most famous sections being built during the Ming Dynasty, so from 1368 to 1644. So while its mortar was often made with sticky rice flour for strength, it has a total length of more than 13,000 miles, as said, and contains a series of watchtowers, fortresses, and passes. So we had 2 hours there, and you could definitely spend a lot longer. For anyone going elsewise, just make sure you've got your passport. Same as a lot of the attractions in China, your ticket is actually connected to your passport, so you need your passport to get into any of these places. The views were amazing, even from the first level where a number of people stopped. So don't worry if you don't want to climb all the way up or you've got mobility issues. I only went part way up anyway. I've got a fear of heights, and I was doing great until I looked down. And then I sort of freaked out and had to get someone to help me cross across and just go back down again. But a lot of people went up and about as far as you could go up. That did take them, sort of the whole 2 hours to go up and back down again. I will have to say that the Great Wall is just amazing. I was quite overwhelmed when we got there. It's something I've seen from an aeroplane, I've heard about, seen on TV. But for some reason, I never thought I'd actually see it. And you get there and it's just there. It was really cool. I got quite overwhelmed by it. So if you're enjoying this video, then please do like and subscribe. It costs you nothing to subscribe, but it really helps my channel grow. I'm trying to hit 1,000 subscribers, so come on, help me get there, please. I came back down and I explored and found a great little museum part, some interesting relics, and I love the little stone projectiles in one of the cabinets. It really brought the history to life, like you could almost picture the battles and daily life happening right around you. So I recommend going into this little museum if you've got time. If you've only got 2 hours and you want to go all the way to the top, then that will be all you can do. But if you've got time, yeah, if you go sort of back down again and around the back, you can go to the little museum bit. There are stores selling souvenirs on the first level, but you have to haggle really hard with them. They start really, really high. So if you don't want to do that, at the bottom near the entrance, there's also a large store that's reasonably priced, and there was no bargaining to be had there. So if you don't want to do all the hard work just to get your souvenirs, just go down to the main sort of shop at the bottom. So yeah, 2 hours. Once again, it was time to move on. So there's always somewhere to be on a TripADeal tour. So next up was the included lunch with Peking duck. I'm not sure why this was a big deal about it being the included meal, as the duck really wasn't great. The rest of the food was, but the duck was sort of chewy and just not great. So I find it funny that that's the one like included meal other than breakfast that they give you, and they've got a big thing about a Peking duck lunch. So after lunch was the optional afternoon excursion to the Hutong area and a dinner at a local house. This was also 300 yuan, so I thought it was quite expensive and I wasn't going to do it. I looked it up, the same differing reviews on this one, but many people said it was great and the food was amazing. So I wasn't going to do it, but we were tired at this point, and so it seemed a good way to see the area and get fed and not have to think for ourselves. So I didn't think it was worth the amount that we paid, but overall I enjoyed the experience, and with the long weekend crowds, it would have been hard to do on our own. So we walked through the area. It was meant to include a pedicab ride, but that was cancelled until the next day. So the government had called off all the pedicabs from operating because of the crowds. This was great because we got to do it the next day, and the people who didn't choose to do the full afternoon excursion was able to do that the next morning as well. I know I'm not one for organised tours, but I have to say, with the changes that happened here today, I could see that, how it really helped having locals plan it and make it a really efficient day. And when, changes did have to happen, they could just change it to the next day, which with the language issues and everything might have been hard to do yourself. So we had some free time to do some shopping and look around before heading back to a house to eat. So really enjoyed walking around the area in the shops. Found this cute little leather store where I picked up a little leather covered notebook, and my husband got a very well priced full leather belt. So yeah, the shopping was fun. So we had dinner at a house. It was okay. It was not a highlight of the trip like some say, but maybe that depends who you got cooking. I mean, the food was okay. It wasn't great though. So that was another day done, and morning came round, another breakfast, and we're off again at 9 a.m. So one thing I really noticed in China was how clean the streets are, how clean everything is. And as you're driving along, there's all these really, beautifully tended flower beds and trees by the roadsides. So that, yeah, it was something interesting about China. So we headed on back over to get the pedicab ride that we missed out on the day before. Oh, if you see these little boxes along the street, they're portable chargers. So everything is so reliant on technology and phones in China. So if you run out of power, you can just rent one of these and then you pop back into another box when you're done. So they're everywhere and you just take one from one and then pop it into a different one. So yeah, off onto the pedicab ride. The weather was lovely. It was much less busy. So we were really lucky that, we'd got it moved to the next day. He charged the people who were only doing that 100 yuan. Anyway, it was a really nice ride along the river, really scenic and enjoyable. And then we were off to another of the mandatory presentations. This one was a Chinese medicine place. So we sat through the presentation, which was actually sort of quite interesting about, Chinese medicine and how it works. And then it came to the Chinese medicine selling bit. They said that they could diagnose you in, 2 minutes or something. I don't know. We said no to that, and there was some people in another room in the building that were doing a head and shoulder massage, and it was just 30 yuan, $6 for 15 minutes. So we did that. So yeah, I quite enjoyed going to the Chinese medicine place. Got a nice massage, and so then we're ready to go again. So we had some free time, and we went to the shops. We checked out the amazing tech at the Huawei store. There's flip phones, folding tablets. There was even Huawei cars, so that was pretty cool. And we checked out the Apple store and Uniqlo. I always check out Uniqlo. I'm always interested in the prices. They were similar to Australian prices. And then we went back to the group and transferred to the station to grab some food for the next journey. And that's where we caught the 4:53 p.m. train, which arrived at Suzhou at 10:47 p.m. So it was great to sit down and enjoy the changing countryside and the high-speed trains. We've clocked 342 kilometers per hour on one of these trains, so check out my Suzhou video for more about that. So yeah, full days, as you can see, but really enjoyable and saw some amazing things. So I hope you enjoyed this video. So check out my full China playlist to see other destinations we went to and what I think about TripADeal. Next up, I'm going to be making a video all about the pros and cons of using TripADeal to go to China. So subscribe to see that first. So until next time, bye.